Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is Great Big History Podcast. In this episode of 10 Questions, we deal with the Hebrews at war, in trauma, and in their philosophy. So, how does trauma create monotheism's biggest problem? Well, we have to start with what is monotheism's biggest problem. And that is that it has to explain why bad things happen to good people. See, polytheism has evil gods. It has death gods. It has trickster gods like Loki that like doing bad things. They may not be evil, but they like doing naughty stuff. So, polytheism says, why do bad things happen? Because the gods are bad. Because there are bad gods. Because the gods are cruel and they're selfish. Because they're people, just with unlimited time. But if Yahweh is good, if Yahweh is all-powerful, why does Yahweh allow there to be evil? Why do bad things happen to good people? Shouldn't God intervene? Since God is all-powerful and all-knowing, should not Yahweh intervene to protect the good and the righteous from bad things happening? Now, you may go, whoa. Well, there's bad people who do bad things. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking like children getting leukemia at 3. We're talking about that. This is not free will and someone does something bad. No, we're talking about bad things happening to people who are blameless for those bad things that happen. No 3-year-old deserves leukemia. None. So why doesn't God just get rid of leukemia? Since God can make any rule God wants, Yahweh could just say, leukemia under 50 just doesn't happen. And it'd be like one of those weird science things. This is a weird thing of science, but people under 50 just don't get leukemia. Go figure. It can't be explained. And it just would be. So that's the purpose of Job. The purpose of Job is to explain what is the nature of divine justice and what is the nature of divine power. And are they the same or are they different? So how does Yahweh answer Job's questions? So Job is a righteous person, and that is very, very, very important. God says it at the start. Yahweh says it at the start of the book of Job. And this is why Job is probably the best, most literary of the books in the Bible. Probably this and the Gospel according to John. Because it starts with the truth. Job is good. Job has done nothing wrong. Because the answer to characters in the story and to readers of the story is to assume he deserves the bad things that happen to him. So you have to always remember, Job has done nothing wrong. He has followed the rules. He is righteous. The reason that his wealth, his family, even his friends turn on him, the reason that everything is taken from him is that Satan makes a bet with God, which seems very ungodlike, if you ask me, but I'm not a theologian. But Satan makes a deal. Oh, Job doesn't really love you. He loves the stuff you give him. So take the stuff away, and Job will curse you. And God says, sure, try that. And Job doesn't curse him. And then Satan says, well, let me curse his body. Let me curse him with festering boils. And let me make him live in his own feces. And then he'll curse you. And God says, sure, do that. But you can't kill him. You're not allowed to kill him. And Satan does that. And again, Job doesn't turn on God. And then Job's friends show up and they say, Job, say you're sorry. You did it. You did something. And Job says, no, no. He does not speak in anger about Yahweh, but he does say, I have done nothing wrong. Show me what I have done wrong. Tell me what I have done wrong, and I will apologize for it. But I am not apologizing for things I have not done. That's a lie. I haven't done anything wrong. And we know he's right. We know Job is right because God has said so. So God doesn't lie. So since God has said Job has done nothing wrong, we know that when Job is fighting with his friends, and his friends are like, see, you think you haven't done anything wrong. You have the sin of pride. Job's like, I haven't done anything wrong. Like, literally, I haven't done anything wrong. I don't deserve all of these bad things happening. I'm not going to turn on God. I just want to know why. Come down here and tell me what I have done. He owes me that. And then Yahweh arrives. Yahweh shows up. Yahweh shows up in what's called the whirlwind, in the tornado. He shows up not as a person, but as this element of unspeakable power of nature. And he answers Job's question. What have I done wrong? He answers by not answering. For 3 chapters, for something like 140 lines, for the longest speech, by far, Yahweh gives in the Jewish books, by far, like an order of magnitude, he speaks to Job. He does not respond to the question. He does what politicians do. Like kind of politician 101, you know this if you've watched a debate. You know this if you watch interviews. You know that rule 1 of a politician is do not answer the question that you were asked. Answer the question you wish you were asked. And so Yahweh ignores Job's question and responds with power. Where were you when I created the heavens? I'm sorry. I didn't know you knew how to make a dawn. I looked around. I didn't see you anywhere. I separated the waters. Were you there? Were you bathing in it? No. Why do I owe you an explanation? Why does a chicken? You don't know why. Do you know how to make the dawn? Do you know how to create the Leviathan in the ocean? Do you know how to separate the waters from the mountains? No. How about the light from the darkness? I did that. Where were you? Why do I owe you an explanation? He responds, God responds with power. And if you have ever heard your parent, your mother, answer with, I'm the mommy, that's why. I'm the parent, that's why. It's my house, so it's my rules. Notice that probably the question was, why? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to obey you? It's not fair. And you're talking about fairness. You're talking about justice. How does your parent respond? With power. I made you. I'm the parent. I pay the bills. If you want, when you live under your own roof, you can make your own rules. Well, that's power. That's how Yahweh responds to Job. Job has asked a question about fairness, about justice. Yahweh, who knows that he is not being just right now, he has allowed Satan to torture Job, which is not justice, to test Job. Responds with power. So how does Job respond? Now, there are different translations of this, but I have this one, and it's Job. I know you can do everything. Nothing you can do, you do. I know you can do everything. Nothing you do can be foiled or frustrated, meaning you have all power. You asked, who is this that conceals counsel with empty words, void of knowledge? Like, who speaks but doesn't understand, right? That's God's question. Who are you to ask me? You. You nothing, when I am everything. And now that I see that I have spoke of, but did not comprehend, great wonders that are beyond me, I didn't know. You said, hear me now, and I will speak. I will be asking the questions, and you will supply the answers, meaning Job will supply the answers. That God is not going to answer. Job is going to have to answer God's questions. Before I knew only what I had heard of you, but now I have seen you. Therefore I realize the truth. I disavow and mourn all I have said, and repent in dust and ash. Now, the traditional way of reading that is that Job doesn't quite say he's sorry, but says, you're God, and who am I to question you? The response is ambivalence. He doesn't say he's sorry. He doesn't say, I should never have questioned you. He doesn't say, you're right, God. You do everything you're right. I am nobody. I am nothing. Well, he does kind of say I am nobody and I'm nothing. And so the traditional, like 90% of the responses, if you read what does Job say, says he realizes God is better than him and that God doesn't owe him an answer. I don't like that answer because I am going to tell you I am in the minority of this. Now, there are some great philosophers who I will agree with, who agree with my position, but I am clearly in the minority. I'm going to explain this. And a big part of where this comes from is from Jack Miles's book, God, a Biography, his interpretation, his reading of the older scripts, of the older books, of the older translations. But there's other philosophers that do the same thing, that are, famous and old philosophers. But here's the thing. I work with a lot of teenagers. And I know sarcasm when I see it. I know when Job cannot tell God that God is full of shit. Obviously he can't. It's God not as a person. He's not a homeboy. They're not having a beer. He has come as a whirlwind. He has come as a tornado of fire and thunder and lightning. He has come all God, all power, and in a thundering voice has said, who are you to question me? You nothingness. But see, this God is supposed to be different. This God is not supposed to be a God of power like the Babylonian gods, like Moloch, who says, you will kill your children for me. And people do. That's not this God. This God is, follow my rules, and I will help you, my chosen people. Abraham cut the bippy off his bippy, and thus had Isaac and Ishmael, two sons. This is a God of justice. This is the God of rules, not chaos. And so to me, the idea that the last five, that 5 and 6, before I'd only heard of you, well, what did he hear? He heard, you're just, you're good. You're a God of your word. You're a God of the rules, and I have followed those rules. And remember, we know he has, right? God at the very, 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 very beginning has said, Job has followed my rules. Yeah, I heard about you. and now I see you. And I realize the truth. I disavow and mourn all that I said. See, all those words I said, a lot of them were, you're the man, you're the God, I owe you, I will apologize to you, I love you, I follow you. See, I disavow and mourn all that I have said, meaning all the good stuff. Because he has not, up to this point, disavowed God. He's only questioned his justice. I repent in dust and ash. Why? Because the God that I have been following is not who I thought. I see you clearly now. You've had this moment, maybe. And if you haven't, you will. When you'll see your parent as a person and not as your mom or as your dad, suddenly you'll look at them and go, now I understand. And that might be when you have your own kid. You'll have your own kid and your father will say something to you and you'll be like, you know, now that I'm a father of my own, I know that's not the way to behave. I know you didn't have to be that way. I know you chose it. And you chose it because you could, because you wanted to. You didn't have to. You wanted to. And suddenly, that power of I am your father, I am your mother, will fall. And you'll be like, you're just a person. Like all other people. And here's Job basically saying, you're just a God like all the other gods. Remember, this is monolatry, right? There are other gods out there. And you are supposed to be special. And you're not special. You're just like all the other gods. We see Jeremiah do something the same. He questions Jeremiah. Jeremiah who goes to Judah and says, God is coming to destroy you. The Babylonians will come and take you as slaves because you've been bad. And I cannot stop that. I have tried. Jeremiah says, Lord, I have always been fair whenever I've complained to you. However, I would like to speak with you about the disposition of justice. Right? We have fairness and now justice. Fairness in line 1, justice in line 2. Why are wicked people successful? I am running around Judah telling people to be good, and yet what I see is wicked people being successful. And people ask me, well, why should I be good? Wicked wins. Why do all dishonest people have such easy lives? Why aren't they brought to justice? So it's not just Job, which is a story. It's a moral story. It's not a history. But the prophets have the same problem. And the answer is, it's ambivalence. It's that the justice and power are not the same. God does not owe you an explanation. There is no good answer except for trust. You have to trust God, that God knows what they are doing. Now, I used a very specific word earlier. Another T word. Test. We're going to see that pop up later. But at the moment, we have the first T word. And Job's T word is not test. It's in the end not test. It's trust. That in the end, Job is, okay, you're God. I trust you. Even if he doesn't like it. Even if he doesn't approve of it. Even if he thinks God has broken his word. He does not disavow God. He continues to trust God and gets rewarded for it. God turns to the three people, his three friends, Job's three friends, and say, how dare you insult Job by saying he did anything wrong? Job didn't do anything wrong. And they're like, but wait, you can't punish us. He's like, I can punish you. I'm God. He's like, but we were defending you against Job, who Job was questioning why you could do things. And we said, you must have done something wrong. And he's like, exactly. And Job did nothing wrong. And he's like, but we were on your side. And God's like, yeah, I don't care. You were not on Job's side. You were not on the truth side. So I'm punishing you three. Fair as that. And so Job gets 7 times whatever he lost. He's back, right? He gets everything back multiple times, right? But here's the interesting thing. Yahweh, as a character in the Old Testament, as a character in the Jewish books, never speaks again. Yahweh takes a vacation and never comes back. Now, if you're a Christian, you say, well, he came back as Jesus. Yeah, but this is not a Christian story. This is a Jewish story. This is, in fact, so old, this is probably a Babylonian story. This is probably the oldest story in the Old Testament by when it was originally written, or when it was originally written down in a version that will become the version that's in the Bible. Because it's different. It's constructed differently. There's things in it that says it's older than the other stuff around it. And it's differently placed in the Jewish text, in the Jewish testaments, than in the Christian testaments. It's moved around. So in the Jewish text, God never speaks again. There's a concept in philosophy, but also in literature. Tony Kushner talks about this. This is his basis for Angels in America was, what if God took a vacation and didn't come home? What would happen? What if God just got bored with us and left? What if God is your father who doesn't like you very much? And thus, Angels in America was born. It was born in a time of trauma, of AIDS, of Reagan, of conservatism, of death, of just, if you were a liberal, if you were gay, if you were Jewish, not a good time. You know, there's threats of nuclear war. And so that's the Angels in America. And if you have not seen Angels in America or read and seen it as a play, go on HBO Max and go and watch it. It is stunning. It is absolutely stunning, especially part 1. It is actually absolutely mind-blowing what you could do on stage. So it's very hard to do on stage. So if you can see it on stage, please, but at least watch the Mike Nichols version of it. It's just excellent. All right. So now we're going to do politics. We're going to transition to politics. So that was our philosophy, trauma and philosophy. Now we do trauma and politics. What did David build? Well, you see if you're on the video, David built Jerusalem. He built a capital. Jerusalem existed as a fortified city, but now he makes it a capital. What kind of capital? A Mesopotamian capital. And why? To announce that the Hebrews are a serious people. This is around 1000 BC. And this is the idea that the Hebrews are a serious Mesopotamian people. Remember, Egyptians don't build cities. They don't need to. They have pyramids. They have the Nile. They don't need a big city, right? Mesopotamians are all going to build big cities because they have to compete with Babylon. Now, Jerusalem is maybe 20,000 people at most. Like, it's not Babylon, right? It's 1/10 the size. But the idea is that we are a serious people. And what David builds is a militarily powerful middle kingdom capable of uniting Canaanites, defeating Philistines, see his one-on-one battle with Goliath, and trading with the Phoenicians. He's able to kind of create a kingdom that safely exists between Egypt and Babylon. It's not the biggest dog on the block. It's not even close to the biggest dog on the block. But it can beat up its neighbors and culturally start to absorb them, right? It can defeat its enemies, the Philistines, who scared them earlier, right? And it can have a productive relationship with its wealthier, more advanced neighbors, the Phoenicians. So there you go. So this is good. And David will die and give way to his son, Solomon, which is like his 10th son, but it's his son with Bathsheba. And what will Solomon build? He'll build the massive temple structure, the temple to the God Yahweh. How big is it? It's 30% of the square footage inside the walls. It's going to employ thousands of priests. It is an entire economic center of the kingdom. The biggest thing in the capital. It's the biggest economic engine in the capital. What does this tell us? Is that religion is the most important cultural aspect. That this culture, unlike the other cultures in which religion is important, but it's one part of their culture, religion for the Hebrews is the most important cultural aspect. So what happens? Well, Solomon has lots of kids. He has something like, 56 wives or 56 kids. Like, Solomon gets around. And his kids don't agree with each other, and the peoples don't agree with each other, and the kingdom is ripped apart into two parts. One is a conservative part and one is a liberal part. So it breaks into these two unequal parts. They're not break in half, it breaks into unequal parts. And because if you're on the video, you may go, oh, look, that purple part looks about as big as the green part. Remember, half that purple part is all desert. It's a Negev desert. So there's nothing there. It's the empty quarter. So you have to just remember that. And the entire coast of Judah is owned by the Philistines. So those are guys who are tough barbarians. The Judeans are not going to do well against them. David did okay. The Judeans are not. Why? Well, because these two unequal parts are going to be Israel in the north, who's the cool cousin kingdom. Israel is cool. It's urban. It's more capitalistic. It has ties to Mesopotamian culture, politics. It's hanging out with Phoenicians. There's also less religion. And they follow the rules less. They're cooler. They're more advanced. They're more urban. They're more capitalist. They're richer. They're better educated. They're cool. The Phoenicians like them. The Babylonians like them. In the south, there's Judah. And I hope you are the cool cousin. But if you are the cool cousin, then you all have a Judah in your family that your mom makes you hang out with, and that is the uncool cousin. Judah in the south is uncool. Now, it has Jerusalem. It has the capital. It has the temple. But that just tells you just how uncool Judah is. It's more conservative. It's more rural. There's less trade. If you're looking at the video, you can see that there are several major highways that go through Israel, trading between Phoenicia and Mesopotamia and Israel on their way to other places. They avoid Judah. They do not travel through Judah. The coastal highway goes through Phoenicia. It goes from Phoenicia to Israel to the Philistines, which is Gaza today, on its way to Egypt. The other highway, going from Babylon, hooking through what is today Syria into Jordan, comes down the other side, the eastern side of Israel, on its way to the Red Sea, trading with the Arabs. So Judah is more isolated, has less people, is poorer, is less educated, less trade, more rural, more conservative, more religious. It's uncool. So how does Judah react to the Assyrian destruction of Israel? Spoiler, Israel's destroyed. In 725, there's a war, Babylon versus Assyria. And Babylon calls in everybody. Babylon calls everybody up. Hey, we're having a party, and at that party, we are going to beat up Assyria. You want to come? And Israel says, yeah, I'm in, man. These Assyrians in the north are like looking for trouble, and I am Trouble Incorporated. But Mom says I gotta call my cousin. No problem, Izzy. We want you to be there. Come on over. If you gotta call your cuz, we cool. You could bring him. You bring your cuz. I mean, your cousin's weird, but we cool. And so Israel calls up Judah and says, let's go have a party. Babylon's throwing a party, and it's going to be awesome. And the king of Judah says, no, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to wash my hair. I'm going to write to my favorite company. I'm going to write to reviews on Yelp and Google review of restaurants I have not been to. And I'm going to write 4 stars. They have great hot buns. Hot buns, get it? Get it, Izzy? Hot buns. Yeah, that's naughty. And Israel's going to say, oh, you're okay, Judah. You do what you need to do. You be you. No judgment. But I'm going to go have a good time with the Babylonians and the Babylonian gods. And, and Judah says, Izzy, you shouldn't fool around with those Babylonian gods. Yahweh's going to be bad. Izzy says, look, I know, but when you're doing 7 minutes in heaven in the closet during the party, all gods seem the same in the dark. Just saying. You could try it, Judah. Try an experiment. Be a little God curious. Like, you don't have to go all the way. Just kind of fool around a little bit. Sow your oats. See what you like. Test it out a little bit. You can't know Yahweh's the one until you sample all the other samples, right? And Judah's like, I don't know. I kind of like Yahweh. Nothing bad has happened. But, maybe you're right, Izzy. You go be you. Have fun. Be safe. And he's like, yeah, no problem. Well, there's a war. And Assyria becomes Neo from the Matrix. He becomes Kung Fu. He's, Chuck Norris. He's like the meme of Chuck Norris. And Assyria destroys Babylon, defeats the allied army, and comes looking for revenge. And they roll into Israel in 725. And they lay waste to it. The archaeology is fairly clear. There is a vibrant Jewish culture one year, and then nothing, like the freaking moon, the next. There is nothing. They destroyed the cities, picked up the people, and scattered them. And these are the famous 10 lost tribes of Israel. This is a genocide. This is like 85% of the population. Because remember, more people lived in the north than in the south. The north was more urban. It was more populated. Judah had less people. It's more rural. The 10 of the 12 lost tribes, that's 85%. Gone. To put that in perspective, that's way worse than the Holocaust. The Assyrians, and this is history, came closer to destroying Hebrew Jewish culture than the German Nazis could ever have imagined doing. Because remember, half of Jews did not live in Europe. They lived in the United States, they lived in South America, they lived in the Near East, in places that the Nazis couldn't get at them unless they completely conquered the world. The Assyrians, on the other hand, like the Romans later, actually could have done it. And the Assyrians actually come close to doing it. There's an argument that the Romans tried, but because of the Assyrian changes that happened after Assyria and after the Babylonian conquest, that they fail. But the Assyrians come close. They picked up the people and scattered them in the empire. And this is a trauma to Judah. Where did our cousins go? What happened to them? How did this happen? How did Yahweh allow this to happen? Our cousins were there, and now they're dead. Now they're gone. They were obliterated. And in 707, Sennacherib comes rolling down to Jerusalem. No one stops him. He comes rolling through like he's the Sons of Anarchy, like he's the Hell's Angels, and he lays siege to Jerusalem. And he says, how you like me now? Were you at that party that tried to beat me up? And Judah says, no, we weren't there. Well, you probably really hate me because I just killed your cousin, right? Yeah, well, you did what you needed to do. I mean, it wasn't nice, but, it's, maybe they, I don't know. Well, you probably want to punch me right in the face, right? You want to attack me? Come on, get your army and attack me. No, I'm just going to sit here in my city. And Sennacherib's like, well, if you don't attack me, then I can't kill you. Okay. Well, I'm the Assyrians, right? I have to kill you. Well, you don't have to. I could probably pay you money. Yeah, you could pay me money. That's true. We're in the middle of the desert, and my army needs some good water. You have a lake that's full of salt, right? Yeah. Make it into a tourist place. We'll sell it to Americans. It's going to be a thing in the very far future. They'll take photographs of them floating. It'll be cool. But right now, it's not helpful. You're right. Well, okay. So, yes. All right. You're sure you don't want to fight me, and then I can kill you and obliterate your people? Yeah, I'm okay with that. All right. So then you're going to have to pay me to not kill you. Okay. You're going to have to pay me a lot of money. Okay. You're going to have to pay me so much money, you're probably going to be really mad about it. Well, yeah, but that's okay. You have to do what you got to do, so charge away. We'll find it. You're sure? Because I'm going to name a number, and that number is probably going to make you really mad, and you're probably going to want to fight me and revolt. And when you revolt, I'm going to get to kill you. Yeah, we won't revolt. That's cool. We understand what the rules are. Thank you. What's the number? We'll find it. We got it sitting around here somewhere. Okay. All right. So, give me. Here's the number. Ooh, that's a big number. Yeah. Well, see, I told you. Well, yeah. We'll get it to you. Can we put in an installment plan, maybe? Yeah. What? Judah, you're a weird guy. You're a weird country. But okay, yeah, sure. Installment plan. I gotta go conquer Egypt. I'll see you later. Okay, have fun. You're weird. What is? Okay. That's 707. Now the Bible will say God saved Jerusalem by sending a plague on the killing 500,000 Assyrians. No, they got paid off. The Assyrians did not get plagued on by God. They had the general. If there was a general sickness in the army. That's true of anybody when you don't have good water. It's cholera combined with dysentery. It's very bad on your guts, and so Sennacherib probably wanted to be on the move, right? But the Assyrians broke into Babylon with their 60-foot tall walls. They could have taken Jerusalem without really doing much about it. They obliterated Israel without even a thought. And so, could they have taken Jerusalem? Yes. But they decide not to. They leave. Judah becomes this kind of, not quite a slave state, but it's not even quite conquered, but it's not an ally either. It's subjected. It's a subjected, colonized state. But the idea was, as long as you don't revolt against the Assyrians, they'll let you survive. So there it is. So Israel's destroyed. 85% of the Hebrews are destroyed. Jerusalem is almost destroyed. Jewish culture is almost eliminated from the history of the world. And if there's no Jewish cultures, there's no Christianity. No Christianity, there's no Islam. There's none of that philosophy. There's none of that art. There's none of that culture. There's none of it. Sennacherib came this close to completely changing the cultural history of the world. If he had just been a little bit more angry, and he was an angry dude, things could have been very, very, very different. And that's just not me saying that. There's actually a chapter called What If Sennacherib Had Destroyed Jerusalem in 707 in the What If series of history books. I think it's in it's in volume 1, I think. Might be in volume 2, but I think it's in volume 1, which is military events. What if some military events had turned out differently? And one of them is, what if Sennacherib had conquered Jerusalem? How would that have changed history? Well, you would have changed everything. You would have changed monotheism. We might not have any monotheism. We might all be Buddhists, to be honest. I don't know. So how did the Judeans react? It's trauma. So how they react is by shame-blaming Israel. This is our first slut-shaming in history, is Judah blaming Israel. See, Israel got what it deserved. Israel was fooling around with Mesopotamian gods. It was fooling around in Mesopotamian politics. It was taking on a whole lot of Mesopotamian culture, like it was eating pork. It was eating bacon in the mornings. It was taking on Mesopotamian clothing. They were hanging a whole lot out with the Babylonians. They got what they deserved. So how are we going to react? How are we going to act? How is Judah going to act? We're going to be super conservative. We're going to follow every rule. We're going to be literalists. And how do I know this worked? Because the Assyrian siege in 707, which I just explained, Judah survives. It's the near end of Judaism, but Judah survives. Wins, the prophets wins. Monotheism wins. Isolated conservatism wins. We're going to stay to ourselves. We're going to be this small, isolated, poor place that's not going to get involved in the bigger world. We're going to have our God, and that's it. Wins. And Judah survives. Which means nothing bad should ever happen again, right? Judah should survive as this small, poor, rural, culturally isolated, but very religious, but surviving state, right? Well, what happens in 585? Well, in 612, as we talked about in 612, Assyria is destroyed, and the Middle East is divided up into 4 major kingdoms. And being close to Egypt, Judah becomes under the Egyptian empire. That's fine. We talked about this before. The Egyptians don't want to destroy Judaism. They don't care. And they don't need to own and colonize and absorb Canaan into an Egyptian. They need Canaan to be a protective wall in case something bad happens. Well, in 585, that thing happens. The Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar comes down in a war against Egypt and invades Judah. And it is a disaster, an absolute disaster. Nebuchadnezzar, the new king of Babylon, destroys Judah, destroys Jerusalem, rips down the temple, and carts off the Hebrews as slaves to Mesopotamia. It is the reversal of everything. Nebuchadnezzar does everything Sennacherib threatened to do. It is a trauma. How could this happen to us? We followed the rules. And many Judeans are done with Yahweh. They're done. They become Babylonian. Now remember, we're down to 2.5, maybe, tribes. We're down to maybe 20% of all the Hebrews that were existing in 750 We're down to 20% of that, right? And so this is a disaster. More people are dead. But many Judeans go, wait, God is supposed to protect us. Yahweh is supposed to protect us. And Yahweh is not protecting us. I followed the rules. I followed all the rules, even the rules that disregard the other rules, and even the rules that tell me that I'm wrong if I followed the first rules. I followed all the rules. I was super at this. I was a literalist. This shouldn't be happening. And so they're like done. They become Babylonian. They're like, this God just sucks. Yahweh sucks. He can't do job number one of a God, which is protect your people. I mean, even if it's bad, even if Yahweh wanted to, the Judeans were doing bad things, like Jeremiah says, his temple should survive, right? No. He couldn't even stop Nebuchadnezzar's men from tearing down the temple to its base stones. Like, what God allows that to happen? Weak gods. That's the whole point. That's why you tear down a temple. So for many Judeans, half maybe, I don't know, nobody knows really, but a lot. It's not nothing. It's easily half to more, to 60%, 70%, are done. They just disappear. They become Babylonian. They stop. They're just done. But for a core group that's left, that 25, 30, 40% that's left, they go, there has to be a reason. We are still the chosen people. Yahweh can't be this weak. We cannot be that wrong. It can't be that Yahweh sucks. That can't be the answer. It can't be that Babylonian gods are stronger. There has to be a reason. And the answer that they come up with is, that's a test. The answer for remaining Hebrews to remain monotheistic. Why should we remain monotheistic when all evidence says we shouldn't? We are slaves. Our temple's destroyed. Our capital is destroyed. Our people are destroyed. Our tribes are destroyed. We have nothing. We have absolutely nothing. We have followed the rules and we have nothing. Why should we stay monotheistic in a world that's polytheistic when all the evidence says being monotheistic is dumb, is a failure? And the answer is, it's a test. It's a test. Why? Because anyone can have faith when times are good. Anyone. Oh, you're making a lot of money? God loves you, right? But real faith is Job. Real faith is belief when times are bad. Go back to Job. Job questions God. Yes, he questions God's justice, but never questions God's power. Never says, you have no right to do what you're doing. He just says, I just want to understand it. I want to know it. Real faith is the belief in something even when the evidence says you shouldn't. To love your partner even when they are cheating on you. To love your children even when they reject you. And so the answer was this test. All Yahweh was doing was getting rid of the bandwagon jumpers. And as a Phillies fan and an Eagles fan, you should understand that. When I came to this town from New York, I came down here, and you could go to a Phillies game in 2007 easy. You could get tickets that day. You could walk up and get tickets, boom, and have good tickets. Down the first base line for cheap. Nobody was going to the games. It wasn't nobody. But the Phillies weren't very good. They were third. They were fourth. They weren't, I don't know where they ended up in 2007, 8. Now, they weren't very good. And then, they got to be really good. And then they got into the playoffs, and you couldn't get a ticket in town. Suddenly, then they win the World Series, and none of my students show up for class. Suddenly, they are all in Phillies stripes and with a big P on them, and they're wearing Phillies caps. Caps I haven't seen in years. Suddenly, they were all Phillies fans. They all wanted to go to the parade, and good for them. Why not? But let me ask you, Were they all real fans? Or were there bandwagon jumpers? Were they only fans when they started to do good and it felt good to be a fan? As a Seahawks fan, I know that feeling. I have been a Seahawks fan since 1982. Since Steve Largent, since I got to watch a game and Steve Largent caught this basket, this manna from heaven over his shoulders, over his head, and I was like, that's my man. I love Steve Largent. He is my wide receiver. He is my player. When I play football, I want to be like him. That was it. I was entranced. And my Seahawks weren't good for the next 20 years. And then they became good. And then they became really good. And all of a sudden, I'm living in New York and I'm living in Philly, and regular folk are walking around in Seahawks outfits. I have a cross stitch an old girlfriend made for me back in 1996, that's hanging on my wall in my office. It's older than most of you have been alive in my class. So how do I feel about all these people suddenly being Seahawks fans? Like, it's nice that they're Seahawks fans, but man, I was a Seahawks fan in 1988 when things were just not good. 1991 when things are terrible. So who's the real fans? Who's the real followers of Yahweh? And so the attitude was, this was a test to get rid of all those people who don't have real faith. And so Judaism starts to take on modern forms to allow it to survive in bad times. And this is incredibly important because this is going to turn the Hebrews into Jews. This process of Babylonian captivity is where you get Judaism that looks modern, that looks like modern Judaism. Now, it's going to keep changing because it's still 500 BC, but we get rabbis instead of priests. The rabbi is the teacher. The priests were the temple institution. Well, there's no temple anymore. You're going to have reading the Torah. That's your bar bat mitzvah. So suddenly the Hebrews are going to become a literate people, but you're going to have something to read. So that's the books of wisdom. They start to be written down. They weren't written down before. And if they were only really open to the priests. Now they're open to everybody. In fact, to become a man in Judaism or a woman in Judaism is to have to read. Nobody else has that. Christians don't have that. Catholics don't have that. Catholics have a very special book that is read to you. Now, Muslims will have the Quran, which you're supposed to read, and they'll have the Hadith, which you're supposed to know. But most people, most Arabs were not literate. Most people in the early days of Islam weren't literate. And so it's a weird kind of like, if you do Islamic prayers, it's still you have a person read to you from the book. And that's a solution to the problem of you should read the book yourself. But one, it's complicated. And two, most of you can't read. So you're going to need some help with that. So until you can read, we'll read it to you. So Islam continues in all of its things to be like a piece of one Judaism. It's like one part Judaism plus one part Christianity. And they kind of meld it together. So those books are written and then they're collated into what becomes, for Christians, the Old Testament. They're not all the same books. They're not all the same, written the same way, right? Christians are going to take a bunch of those books and get rid of them. Anything that says that, anything that says a prophet is coming who will save the world, they keep. Anything that says you can save yourselves, you don't need prophets, they're going to get rid of. Family becomes incredibly important. Now, it was important before, but now it's about not intermarrying, that the community is more important than the place. The idea is don't fool around with Babylonian gods. Don't fool around with Babylonian women or men either. That how you behave and how you treat your family and the survival of your family is not just about you. It's about the survival of your entire people. Community is more important than the place. Jerusalem is gone. Jerusalem is obliterated. The temple is gone. but we can still be Jews when we're together. And so the ceremonies, Passover and Hanukkah, become about togetherness. The Seder is about togetherness. The ceremonies of this are about remembering. So there's Shabbat, Sukkot, the one that's after Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, which is you sleep in a tent. That one is about remembering. Being on the move, searching for a homeland. Because now, in Babylon, you don't have a homeland. You were slaves in a foreign land. So it's to remember when things were bad, because they weren't always bad. They were good. So if they are bad now, they can get good again. Cyrus? Cyrus is the answer to that faith. Cyrus is passing the test. Cyrus conquers Babylon, just like Isaiah said he would. We have Isaiah, we have Daniel, we have prophets that say, oh, Cyrus is the man. And he allows the Judeans to return to Judea. That Judea is their rightful home. That becomes the basis for Zionism in the 20th century, in the late 19th and the 20th century. Zionism was originally a response to anti-Semitism in Europe, especially in France. And Zionism was, we need a homeland. We need a Jewish homeland. And the first thought was, well, we just need a homeland. We don't have a place. We've been kicked out. We have been homeless for roughly 2,000 years. So it doesn't matter what our home is. We'll go to Madagascar. We'll go to some place, Kenya. We'll go to some place that's sparsely populated and that's away from the Europeans. But in the end, Zionism went, no. We're Jews. We're Judeans. We belong in Judah. We got to go back to Judah, Israel. That's our homeland. The land that Moses promised. The land Joshua conquered. The land David consolidated. The land Solomon built upon. That's our homeland. And so Zionism became about getting back there. But it's founded as a philosophical concept on Cyrus saying to the Hebrews, that's your homeland. I am sending you back. You don't belong here in Babylon. You're not Babylonian. You get to go back. And he helps. The Persians help rebuild Jerusalem. The Persians help rebuilding the temple. They allow it to happen, first of all. And second of all, they're going to help with the stone and the money and the stuff. Right? And so the Hebrews are loyal to the Persians. They join the army. They don't join Alex. When Alexander comes rolling through, he's like, are you going to fight me? And they say, no, we're not going to fight you. Because the Babylonian king has fled, the Persian king has fled to Babylon, and we're here in Judah. But he's our ally. He's our friend. His ancestor Cyrus took care of us. So we're not going to attack him either. And Alexander says, I respect that. You're not going to stab me in the back when I'm like in Egypt or I go up to fight them though, right? They're like, no, your fight is with the Persians, not with us. We just can't join you. And Alexander's like, I respect that. I respect that. You can do that. See, the Babylonians and the Egyptians and the Assyrians wouldn't respect that. But Alex, to his credit, says, as long as you're not going to fight against me, we cool. And then he goes on to Egypt, who welcome him as a pharaoh. So the Hebrews are going to have way more problems with the Greeks. It's the Greeks, and that's how we get the Maccabean revolt. That's how we get Hanukkah, the story of Hanukkah, whereby the siege. The Greeks are going to lay siege to Jerusalem, not the Persians. I mean, there's the Book of Esther, but the Book of Esther isn't real. It's a fictitious story. And there's nothing in the history that says there's any Persian king that wants to murder the Jews. There's just none. There is no history to that at all. So what Esther really is it's really a Babylonian story that they can't say the Babylonians, so they use the Persians as the character. It's more about the goodness of Esther than about the badness of the Persians. The Persians are just anyone who wants to get rid of the Judeans, and just historically, it's just not true. The Persians don't want to get rid of the Jews. There's no reason to get rid of the Jews. So whenever that's brought up, I see it brought up because now the modern fight is between the modern state of Israel and the modern state of Iran that are not the same. But there is this kinship. Until 1979, Israel and Iran got along. Israel actually was going to give Iran a nuclear weapon. It was going to give the Shah a nuclear weapon. It's the Islamic Republic after 1979 that's completely changed. The Persians, as opposed to the Arabs, have had a much friendlier, until 1979, had a much friendlier relationship. So, since 2000, or 2000, certainly since like 2010, I don't know, somewhere around the middle aughts, Israel has had a better relationship with the Arabs. They have peace treaties with Saudi Arabia now, and Morocco, and maybe Tunisia too. But Jordan and Egypt was 1979, right? So Egypt was the first. Jordan, I think, was the second. But historically, the Hebrews and the Persians get along. The Hebrews have way more problems with Europeans, whether it's the Greeks, the Romans, or, well, the list then becomes pretty much everybody, right? Everyone at some point in European history persecutes, prosecutes, ejects, or tries to commit genocide on the Hebrews, right? Spain kicks out the Hebrews in 1492. The English kicked the Hebrews out earlier than that. Germany is every 150 years, there's a massacre, right? Russia does the same. I mean, Fiddler on the Roof is about a massacre, right? There's a genocide in the 1640s and 1650s in Ukraine. Meanwhile, there's almost none of that in the Muslim world until the 20th century. So, till after World War II. So, but that's where we are. So Cyrus is the answer to that faith. Now, remember all of those Hebrews that became Babylonian? They don't get to go back. They don't get to be freed. They're Babylonians. They got conquered. They're conquered by the Persians. They don't get to be treated special. They're standing there going, hey, I'm Hebrew. And Cyrus is going to look at them and go, but you said that in Babylonian. And are you eating a pork chop right there? Well, yeah, delicious. And you're wearing the Babylonian clothes. Like the Hebrews, look at them. You don't look like them. So you're not Hebrew. You don't get to go home. You're a slave to me. They get to go home. And so, for those who remain faithful, they pass the test. And that is the most important thing for the survival of Judaism, for the survival of the Jews as a people, because all the people we're going to talk about are gone. The Romans are gone. Ptolemaic Greeks are gone, right? Egypt is gone. Egypt's now Arab, right? All these ancient Semitic peoples we're talking about, they're all gone. Phoenicians are now Lebanon. They're Arabs. They're gone. And yet the Hebrews survive because their culture was built on this trauma, on this ability to survive trauma, of being not tied to the place, but tied to the community, of having survived slavery and genocide. Military defeat to the Egyptians, to the Babylonians, to the Assyrians, to the Babylonians again. So that when the Romans obliterate Jerusalem, pick up the people and scatter them, when the Romans do what the Assyrians and the Babylonians did combined, that 1,000 years of difference allows Judaism to survive. 1,000 years, 500 years, 600 years of difference, excuse me. That 600 years of difference allows Judaism to survive as a culture, despite not being tied to a place anymore. Remember, the Carthaginians don't survive. They got picked up, they got scattered, and they're gone. They got absorbed, they got assimilated, they became Roman. The Hebrews can become Romanized, but they always remain Hebrews. They always maintain the importance of the value. They may pick up other languages. They figure out ways to work within the ocean that is these other empires, but they also are always culturally distinct, loyal to their heritage, which is how you get anti-Semitic tropes like the dual loyalty, and you're not really an American, or you're not really German, the way the Nazis thought about it. They're Jews. They're loyal to Jews first. They're not loyal to us, right? Which isn't true either. But the idea of having a strong community larger than oneself is probably the most important thing that allows Judaism to survive into the modern world, where most people we're going to talk about don't. They change, they assimilate, they become something else. So this is a tough chapter to do. This is all war, destruction, and violence and horribleness, but it ends well because Judaism survives, right? And as a New Yorker, I have Jewish people in my family that I love and care about very much. They've married in. We have Jewish relatives. I have plenty of friends who are Jewish. You know, I'm Catholic. We can live in this milieu together in the modern world, despite all the trauma that happens in the ancient world. So, that there's still difficulties is sad, is problematic, is we need to get past that. So, but I hope you're doing well. I hope you're okay. Be safe. Take care. This is the end of part 1, by the way. This is the last lecture of part 1. So I'm going to take a little bit, and then I'm going to put out the Greeks, which is the start of part 2. And we're going to do Greeks, we're going to do Romans, we're going to do ancient India, we're going to do ancient China. So that's going to be part 2. So things are about to get very interesting, and you're going to start to know more about the stuff we're going to do. So be safe. Take care. You're doing great.